Before we begin, viewer discretion is strongly advised. The following is for educational and entertainment purposes only. This is the verbatim federal courtroom testimony of the Sean Diddy Combs trial, as reported by Inner City Press. Cuba Gooding Jr. took the stand with a heavy sigh, his face weathered by the years of scandal, court appearances, and tarnished headlines. The courtroom murmured as the Oscar winner adjusted the microphone, glanced down at his hands, and tried to steady them. It was his first time speaking publicly under oath about his ties to Sean Diddy Combs, and about the night his own name was dragged into one of the most explosive scandals in entertainment history. Cuba Gooding Jr. took the stand with a heavy sigh, his face weathered by the years of scandal, court appearances, and tarnished headlines.
Okay, for now, focus here for a minute. Don't worry, their drama will keep going on. Think a little about yourself too. An Indonesian scientist has uncovered a shocking truth about belly fat, and it has nothing to do with diet or exercise. 95% of people who tried this strange bedtime ritual lost 25 pounds or more. Some even dropped over 50, all while sleeping. No gym, no starving, just one simple step before bed. It sounds crazy, but it's backed by science. Tap the link in the description and see for yourself.
The courtroom murmured as the Oscar winner adjusted the microphone, glanced down at his hands, and tried to steady them. It was his first time speaking publicly under oath about his ties to Sean Diddy Combs, and about the night his own name was dragged into one of the most explosive scandals in entertainment history. "I'm not here to protect anyone anymore," he began, voice low but steady. "I'm here to tell the truth, even if it hurts. Especially if it hurts." The prosecutor walked him through his early interactions with Diddy. Casual parties, industry mixers, yacht invites. "I met Sean through a mutual friend in the early 2000s, Cuba explained. "He was charismatic, powerful, and knew how to make you feel like you were the most important person in the room. But that charm came with a price." When asked about the infamous yacht party where Diddy allegedly tried to serve him up, a young man named Lil Rod, Cuba's eyes dropped. He swallowed hard. "I didn't know what was going on at first. I thought it was just another party. But there was something about the way he kept saying, 'I got something special for you.' It felt off." He paused. "I remember Lil Rod being there, real quiet, just watching everything. Diddy told him to sit next to me, told him to relax. I tried to make small talk, but he looked scared. He didn't belong there. Not like that." Cuba's voice cracked slightly. "I didn't do anything. I didn't touch him. I never touched him. I swear to God." He raised his hand and looked directly at the jury. "Whatever Diddy was planning, I didn't play that game, but he wanted me to." He set it up like that. The courtroom was silent. The prosecutor nodded, then asked, "Did you feel trapped?" Cuba blinked hard, his voice now shaking. "Yes. God, yes. You don't say no to Sean Combs. He had people, eyes. He'd remind you without saying a word. I got up and left early that night. I knew something was wrong. I've made mistakes, plenty, but not that. Never that." Then came the tears. Cuba reached for a tissue. His hand trembled. "I was in the headlines for things I did, yes, and I've owned up to those. I pled guilty. I paid settlements. I went through hell. But this wasn't me." He took a long breath and continued. "And when my name came up in this circus, I thought I'd lose my mind. I've worked my whole life and now people think I was part of that madness? I'm here because I want people to hear it from me. Not a blog, not a whisper. Me." The prosecutor played a recording from a deposition where Lil Rod described the encounter. Cuba stared ahead as the words echoed in the courtroom. When it ended, he cleared his throat. "If I ever made anyone feel uncomfortable, I'm sorry. But I didn't touch that kid. I didn't touch anyone at that party. And if Sean's team wants to use me as a scapegoat now that the walls are caving in, they picked the wrong man." He looked down. folded the tissue in his hand, and whispered, "I should have said something sooner, but I was scared." The prosecutor let that sit before moving on. Cuba was then asked about his broader relationship with Diddy, what he'd seen, what he suspected. And the answers would only get darker from there. He began describing the parties. It started like anything else in Hollywood: red carpet, champagne, networking. But then the invitations changed. Diddy started throwing these exclusive things. Not even your agent could get you in unless you had the right face or name. Cuba shifted in his seat. "I remember one time at his mansion in Miami, everyone had to give up their phones at the door. That wasn't unusual. But then they handed out robes. Robes. Said it was a spa-themed. But once you were inside, it was like walking into another world." He paused again, wiping his face. "People think I'm saying this now to save myself. I'm not. I've already fallen. This isn't about redemption. This is about putting a stop to what's still going on." There was a beat of silence before the prosecutor leaned in. "Did you ever see someone being hurt?" Cuba looked down. "I heard screams. I heard crying. I saw women rushed out through back doors. But I didn't see anyone physically hurt. Not with my eyes. But I knew. We all knew." The courtroom sat motionless, as if afraid that even breathing too loud might break the gravity of what was unfolding. Cuba Gooding Jr., the man once cheered for yelling, "Show me the money," was now crying not for himself, but for what he failed to stop, for what he may have helped hide, simply by staying quiet. And now, the world was finally listening. He leaned forward slowly and dabbed his eyes with a new tissue. Voice hoarse. There were certain people who never came back to those parties. Women, mostly. I used to think they just didn't have fun, or it was too wild. Now I know. They were probably warned, threatened, silenced. The prosecutor turned to him again, this time changing tone. "Why speak now, Mr. Gooding? Why here?" Cuba hesitated. "Because I have a son. And because I know what happens when you don't say anything. Silence doesn't protect anyone. It only makes the monsters bolder." He described how, in the years after his own scandals, people started avoiding him. Calls dried up, projects vanished, some friends went radio silent. But not Sean. Sean still called, still invited me, and that made me wonder, why? He looked up at the jury. Because he knew I'd been dragged through the mud. Because he thought I'd protect him now, like I owed him. A new exhibit was introduced. A photo from a 2013 trip to the Bahamas. Cuba is seated next to Diddy. In the background, a group of barely clothed guests and blurred-out faces. "I didn't know they were that young," he said. "No one asked. No one checked. We just smiled for the camera." He closed his eyes tightly, holding back more tears. "That picture haunts me. Because I look happy. I look like I'm having the time of my life. And all I can think now is, how many people were suffering around me?" The judge called for a 10-minute recess. Cuba stayed in his chair, rubbing his face and whispering something that only the courtroom mics picked up. "God, forgive me." As the jury filed out, the tension lingered like smoke. No one cheered, no one whispered. They just watched the broken man on the witness stand, caught between his past and a chance to finally tell the truth. Cuba returned to the witness stand after recess with a different kind of tension in the air. His suit was slightly wrinkled now, his eyes bloodshot. He didn't need prompting to continue. He leaned into the mic, like he'd been holding this in for years. "There's one thing I've never said publicly," he began, his voice low and shaking. "One night, at Diddy's house in LA, something happened that I couldn't unsee." He wiped his eyes before the tears even came. "It was one of those parties, the kind where nothing felt real. where everyone had to sign NDAs before walking in, where people walked around in masks, not for fun, but to protect names. I remember walking into the upstairs hallway and hearing a girl scream. The courtroom froze. I didn't know what to do. I froze. I thought maybe it was part of the party. But when I turned the corner, I saw a security guard slamming a door shut, fast, like he didn't want anyone to see inside. Cuba's voice cracked. I asked him what was going on. He just looked at me and said, "This room's off limits, Mr. Gooding." He stared forward, as if he were back in that hallway. I walked away. I didn't say a word to anyone. And that's what haunts me the most. I could have stopped something. I could have asked questions, but I just didn't. The prosecutor remained quiet, letting the moment breathe. When the lawsuits came out, when the stories started breaking, I saw some of those same girls. Different names, same eyes, same fear. I could have spoken up then, but I thought, who'd believe me? I was already knee-deep in my own mess. I thought if I opened my mouth, they'd say I was doing it to save face. Cuba took a long breath and let the silence carry the weight of his words. But it wasn't just me staying quiet. There were dozens of people at those parties. Actors, producers, athletes, influencers. Big names. And they saw the same things. Maybe worse. But they said nothing. Just like I did. And that's the real sickness. The silence. The shame. He sat back, staring at the ceiling. People think Hollywood is a dream. But sometimes, it's just a polished nightmare. Cuba straightened his posture, gripping the arms of his chair as if bracing for impact. When the FBI raided Diddy's house, he said, "I wasn't surprised. I was relieved." He looked toward the gallery, where reporters scribbled notes and observers leaned forward. That day, I was waiting. I knew it was coming. Hell, I hoped it was. Because if they took him down, maybe people would stop calling me crazy for what I'd seen. The prosecutor asked if he had ever seen videos or recordings, surveillance or otherwise, at any of these parties. Cuba nodded. Diddy had cameras everywhere, some out in the open, others hidden. I once asked about it, and he joked, "I like to keep memories." He swallowed hard. But they weren't memories. They were weapons. He paused. Sometimes people would leave their phones behind, and Diddy would have them returned, but not before they were searched. One guy, a producer I won't name, got blacklisted for years after one of those parties. Rumor was he threatened to go public. Next thing we knew, his deals vanished overnight. The prosecutor pressed. "Did Diddy ever threaten you directly?" Cuba blinked, then slowly nodded. "Not in so many words, but he once pulled me aside at a brunch, out of nowhere, and said, 'We're both survivors, man. We've both seen too much. And people like us, we gotta stick together.'" He let out a bitter laugh. It sounded like support. But it felt like a warning. Cuba then leaned forward, visibly emotional. The moment my name came up in this case, I knew I'd be dragged through the mud all over again. I knew they'd say I was just deflecting from my past, but I'm not deflecting. I'm owning it. He held up his hand, tears beginning to roll down his cheeks. I messed up. I hurt people. I touched someone without their permission, and I pled guilty. I served time. I paid settlements. I did the work, and I still carry that shame. But what I'm talking about now, this goes beyond me. This is a system, a sickness, a machine that feeds on silence and thrives on fear. The mood shifted as the prosecutor displayed a series of photos, events, galas, red carpets, where Cuba appeared beside Diddy, smiling, laughing. "Do you remember this night?" the prosecutor asked. pointing to a photo from 2014. Cuba nodded. Yeah, that was the BET after-party in Atlanta, the one with the basement club. What happened that night? Cuba hesitated. There was a girl. Looked barely legal. Maybe not even that. She was dancing on a table. Diddy clapped his hands and pointed to her. A few minutes later, security had her in a side room. I never saw her leave. The gallery stirred. One juror covered her mouth. Did you report it? No, Cuba whispered. I didn't. I told myself she'd be fine, that it wasn't my place, that I didn't see anything clear enough to say something. But deep down, I knew. He looked around the courtroom. You see this industry from the outside and think everyone's living the dream. But when you're inside, you realize the real currency isn't money, it's secrets. He took a long pause, breathing through his nose. Diddy had secrets on everyone, and people knew that. If he had something on you, you kept quiet. If he didn't, you still kept quiet, just in case. The prosecutor approached with one final question for this segment. What do you want the world to take away from your testimony today? Cuba looked directly into the camera, streaming this moment across the globe, and spoke slowly that the truth matters, that your past mistakes don't disqualify you from protecting others, and that if you stay silent long enough, you become part of the problem. I won't be part of the problem anymore. He wiped away another tear. I was afraid. I was selfish. But I'm not that man anymore. And if telling the truth now saves even one person from going through what I saw, then maybe it's not too late. The judge called for another recess. But this time, Cuba stood on steadier legs. Cuba Gooding Jr. returned to the stand after the recess, his shoulders heavier, but his voice more resolute. He didn't wait for a question this time. I have to speak on this next part, he said, gripping the edges of the witness stand. Because I saw things that night I can't unsee. And I can't keep acting like I didn't. The prosecutor nodded for him to proceed. Cuba took a breath, then dove back into the timeline of his encounters with Diddy, particularly one weekend retreat in the Hollywood Hills. It was supposed to be a celebration for someone's birthday. Diddy flew a bunch of us in. No press, no phones, all the usual protocols. But something changed that weekend. There was this weird energy. Not excitement. Tension. Like everyone was waiting for the main event. He wiped his mouth, then his brow. I kept asking what we were really there for, and everyone kept brushing it off. Then around midnight, the house staff started handing out masks. Literally, masks. Black and gold ones. They told us it was a themed party. I thought, okay, maybe it's just theatrics. But when I walked into the back wing of the house, it was something else. His voice cracked again. There were people lined up like cattle. Men and women. Some barely dressed. And Sean, Diddy, was in the middle of it all, like a king overseeing a ritual. It was quiet, eerie. I turned to leave. I didn't want any part of that. But I made the mistake of looking too long. Cuba said one of Diddy's security men cornered him near the hallway. He got close, said, "You didn't see anything, Gooding." That's the rule. You want to keep working, right? I nodded. That's all I could do. I wasn't brave back then. The court was silent, stunned. Cuba looked down. I've been silent for too long. And I know some people are going to say I'm just doing this now to clean up my image or sell a movie, but I don't care. If my testimony helps stop even one person from getting hurt like that, then it's worth every headline, every insult, every backlash. Then he dropped a detail that froze the courtroom. I saw people there that night that are now publicly distancing themselves from Sean. Celebrities, executives, people with families and empires. They all looked the other way. And now, they're saying they knew nothing? That's the lie that hurts most. He continued, more composed but still visibly shaken. The reason I'm speaking now is because I watched that house turn into a graveyard of innocence. And I did nothing. I'm not going to make excuses anymore. I was complicit by staying quiet. He paused, swallowing his shame. At another party in Las Vegas, I saw a young woman being pulled down a hallway. I didn't know her. I didn't even know her name. But I saw her eyes. I saw her trying to signal me, and I did nothing. I just walked away. Cuba leaned into the mic. It keeps me up at night, every night. Because the truth is, there were dozens of those girls over the years, and we didn't ask questions. Nobody did. We were too scared, too selfish, too deep in the world Diddy built. The prosecutor asked if he ever told anyone. Cuba nodded. I tried. Once. I called a lawyer friend of mine back in 2016. Told him about the masks, the parties, the silences. He told me to drop it. Said the NDAs would bury me. Said I'd be painted as unstable because of my own charges. So I stayed quiet. Again, his voice grew firmer. But then Cassie came forward. Then Lil Rod. And I realized I wasn't the only one with nightmares. I wasn't the only one carrying guilt. That gave me the courage to reach out to the prosecution, to say, put me on the stand. I'll talk. Because if someone had done that for that girl in Vegas, maybe her story wouldn't be a cautionary tale now. He wiped his eyes again. I'm not looking for redemption. That's between me and God. I'm looking for justice, for the people who got hurt, for the names we'll never know, for the ones who never made it out of those houses. Then he looked toward the defense table, where Diddy sat, stone-faced. I hope you hear this, Sean. I hope you remember every name, every scream, every party you turned into a prison. Because we remember now, and the truth is louder than your money. As Cuba's final words echoed through the room, the prosecution gave him one last question. What do you want the world to take from your testimony? Cuba looked straight ahead. That silence is a chain. And I broke mine. I want people to know that you don't have to be perfect to speak out. You just have to be honest. You just have to be done with the lies. He continued. Hollywood has this sickness, this addiction to power, and Sean, he was the dealer. He made people feel like gods, and in return, they gave him loyalty. I know because I was one of them, and it cost me my career, my reputation, maybe even my soul. He adjusted his seat. I lost years trying to rebuild what I'd broken in myself, and I'll never fully get back what I lost. But I can be a witness. I can be a voice. Then, suddenly, his composure broke again. He began to cry. Not from guilt this time, but from relief. I can't keep carrying it. I can't keep pretending I didn't see what I saw. He stood, unasked, and addressed the room like a confession to the world. I'm sorry to the women, to the people who thought I was better, to the ones I didn't save. I'm sorry. He sat down, drained. The courtroom sat in stunned silence. The prosecutor simply said, "Thank you, Mr. Gooding," and rested the case. No more spin, no more speculation. Just the truth. Raw, human, and long overdue.